Now, live with Greg Olsen, Director of the New York State Office for the Aging.
Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thanks so much for joining us. My name is Greg Olsen. I'm the Director of the New York State Office for Aging. I have three great friends and incredible guests that we'll get to in a second. Today's June 15th, and that means it is World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, which is, again, worldwide, and it's celebrated today. This day came into being in 2011 to direct the attention of people towards the neglect and abuse undergone by older communities and populations across the world. The day established by the United Nations General Assembly hopes to promote the significance of safeguarding older adults from any form of abuse and taking care of their well-being. World Elder Abuse Awareness Day was launched by the International Network for the Prevention of Elder Abuse and the World Health Organization at the United Nations. The purpose of this day is to provide an opportunity for communities around the world to promote a better understanding of abuse and neglect of older persons by raising awareness of the cultural, social, economic, and demographic processes affecting elder abuse and neglect. And I'd just like to say, while today is really important in raising awareness, we need to understand the signs and symptoms of elder abuse and practice that every single day, not just on June 15th. So let me introduce these three amazing individuals that I have with me today. First is Shelley Feebick. She's the Director of the Bureau of Adult Services at the New York State Office of Children and Family Services. Many folks would know that as Adult Protective Services. So Shelley, welcome. I have with me Anne Marie Cook, who's the President and CEO of Lifespan of Greater Rochester Incorporated. Anne Marie, welcome. And finally, Tina Jansen Spinoza, who's the Manager of the Enhanced Multidisciplinary Teams, or EMDT, at the New York City Elder Abuse Center at the Weill Cornell Medicine, so at college as well. Welcome, Tina, and thank the three of you for joining me today. I want to make a quick disclaimer that the materials and the information that we're providing today are for informational use and purposes only and are in no way intended to constitute legal advice. Later in the program, we'll open the conversation for questions if you have any from our audience. There's going to be a lot of resources today that you can follow up on if this is an issue that touches you, yourself, anybody in your family, or somebody that you may know. For any specific areas of concern, please use the resources that are provided during today's program. And before we get into the Q&A, I want to provide a special recognition on this day for my friend and colleague, Anne Marie Cook. She was provided not that long ago, and Roger will post a video in the chat any minute now, was the recipient of the 4th annual Arthur Mason Advocacy Award for Elder Justice. And this is given to somebody who's dedicated a significant amount of time, but in Anne Marie's case, really her career, among other things, in exemplifying just a passion and commitment in the field of elder justice. So Anne Marie, once again, congratulations and a recognition well-deserved. So let's just jump right into it. We saw the video, and I want to thank Shelley and the folks at APS at OCFS for that PSA. It's a really difficult topic that a lot of folks want to shy away from, that individuals can cause this type of harm, whether it be financial or the other types of elder abuse in older adults, but it happens. And I think all of us, whether you work in this or you live in a general community, need to be aware of this. So can you guys each briefly, and we'll start in the order just the way that I see you, Anne Marie, Shelley, and Tina, tell us a little bit about your organization and what you do when it comes to this issue.
Yeah, thank you so much, Greg, and thank you very much once again for the Art Mason Award. I'm deeply honored. Lifespan operates the New York State Elder Abuse Coalition. We also oversee the enhanced multidisciplinary teams in elder abuse, and of course do intervention, education, and training, much of it statewide. But we have been involved in this issue since the 1980s in really working with the Aging Service Network to help identify older adults who have been abused, intervene, and work with our partners like Adult Protective Services to protect older adults throughout the state.
Shelley?
Good afternoon, everybody. So at the Office of Children and Family Services, the Bureau of Adult Services is responsible for the oversight of every county who has an Adult Protective Services unit. And with that, we provide technical assistance and oversight. We support the county workers who go out to do investigations and assessments of those vulnerable and dependent adults who may need protective services. In addition to that, we also participate in several committees that were designed and developed to support elders and to make sure that their needs are being protected and met. And thank you very much for posting our video. We just launched a statewide public awareness campaign on elder and adult abuse, which happens today. And hopefully folks will be seeing that video throughout social media and on television as well.
Thanks, Shelley. Tina?
Yes, hi. Thanks, Greg. So I'm with the New York City Elder Abuse Center at Weill Cornell Medicine, and we have 3 core programs. More about that can be found on our website at nysiac.org. But we have the EMDT program, which provides case consultations to professionals. We also lead EMDT meetings across the 5 New York City boroughs and provide technical assistance to several New York State hubs. Another one of our programs is the Helpline for Concerned Persons, which serves concerned persons in the lives of elder abuse victims living in New York State. And a concerned person can be a family member, a friend, a neighbor, someone who is impacted by elder abuse, and information can also be found on our website for folks to call in if they suspect elder abuse. And then the third program is the National Elder Abuse MDT Training and Technical Assistance Center, which provides training and technical assistance to OVC-funded teams across the United States.
Yeah, thank you. And, for those who are listening live or will be, these 3 very different organizations, and as Anne Marie talked about, some folks have been working on this for a very, very long time. I want folks to know that while there's some differences here in the organizations that approach and how to identify and mitigate elder abuse, all of them are working together, and the breadth of the organizations, whether public, private, community-based across the state that are working on this issue, is unbelievably vast because it's an all hands on deck approach. So any of you or all of you, we can't educate till we know exactly what we're talking about here. So define for me or tell me what elder abuse is.
Yeah, Greg, I'll take that one. Elder abuse can be physical abuse, psychological, emotional, sexual, neglect, or financial exploitation. And it's really perpetrated by someone that the victim knows well. It could be family member, could be neighbor, could be friend, or someone caring for that individual. It's sad to say, honestly, that elder abuse is perpetrated primarily by trusted individuals, but that is the fact.
Yep, you're right. What is the fastest growing or most common form of abuse? And I don't want to minimize other ones because they're all extraordinarily serious. But what do you guys see the most of traditionally, and is that changing?
Well, go ahead, Shelley.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, from our perspective, and, Anne Marie, your lens might look a little bit different, right? Because our requirements are different. Certainly, emotional abuse and neglect are always the most commonly reported. the one that gets the most recognition and certainly is always climbing is financial exploitation. There are scams after scams, and I know Anne Marie's going to talk about that a little bit more, that are just ever evolving because the folks who put their time and energy into developing a scam are getting sharper and quicker and more creative.
Greg, I want to add too, as Shelley said, neglect is such a big issue, emotional abuse. But, when we did the New York State Elder Abuse Prevalence and Incidence Study on individuals 60 and older, the most common form of abuse was major financial exploitation and perpetrated by family members who stole older adults' money. Very difficult to look at. And we estimate, by a study that OCFS did, that it costs about $1.5 billion a year in New York State as a result of that financial exploitation.
Yeah, and that's extraordinarily conservative because I think that report only covered 31 counties. So that is the cost to investigate, serve the individual that has needs, and possible restitution. So, right, that's a low number. And I know we're going to talk about financial exploitation and scams a little bit later. But as we all know, 83% of all the wealth in this country is held by older people, whether that be, home equity, which is about $8 trillion, and to Shelley's point, the sophistication of scammers is off the charts. And could be very simple messaging that individuals get that really starts this. And a lot of it isn't, the $300 or $400 or $1 million from wealthy individuals. It could be $100, $200 on an ongoing basis. But I don't want to jump ahead of myself. You talked about the prevalence study, Anne Marie, and that was really a game changer. And I'm going to ask Roger to put that link into the chat as well for people to see. Because not only did that raise awareness in New York State, but it raised awareness across the country as it was in the New York Times. But it was about prevalence. It was a prevalence study. So talk a little bit about what you found.
Yeah, Greg, first of all, it was one of the largest elder abuse studies ever done in the world. So incredible. But we found that about 300,000 older New Yorkers will be abused every year. So think about that. That's cumulative. So that's every single year. We found that it's largely a hidden problem, that only 1 in 24 cases ever get reported to anybody at all, whether anybody in the formal system, so that an older adult can be helped. And we found that the most common form of abuse for those 60 and older is financial exploitation. But we also found, Greg, that oftentimes financial exploitation is coupled with other forms of abuse, whether that's emotional abuse, and oftentimes escalates to physical abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let's just put that into perspective. So you had the 300,000 number, and I'm going to put that into perspective for folks. The number of individuals who are diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease in New York State is about 330,000. So that's the magnitude of what we're talking about here. So Tina, has this increased over the last couple of years? The pandemic and the isolation. I go back to Shelley's PSA, and the first picture there was on the isolation. Are you seeing an uptick, an increase, especially during the pandemic, or is this just a systemically increasing problem in your view?
I think it's systemic, but I also think that a lot of during the pandemic, because there were a lot less in-home visits, face-to-face visits with older adults, we are definitely seeing an uptick now that we are starting to go back and seeing people face-to-face and hearing things because of these face-to-face encounters. So I think that a lot during the pandemic, maybe the older adults did not know who to reach out to or didn't have access. And now there's definitely an uptick.
Is all forms of abuse, so you laid out what those are, all three of you. Are these civil issues? Are they criminal issues? Are they prosecutorial? what are some of the other forms of restitution or justice or systems to help victims? And any of you could answer that.
Greg, several years ago, New York State was, did some groundbreaking work on a pilot project to create these enhanced multidisciplinary teams in elder abuse. And I have to say, as you pointed out in the beginning, I've been around the Aging Service Network for a long time, but I had never seen a team be able to work so efficiently and effectively in elder abuse. And in the first year we were operating these teams, a full year, we got $1 million restitution for those individuals who are financially exploited. I have to say, more than the previous 10 years combined that I was been working in closely with our team who works in elder abuse. So I think, while this is a very tough topic, there are some innovative things going on here in New York State that involved Adult Protective Services, the Office for Aging Folks, nonprofits, law enforcement, the DA's office, and certainly forensic accountant and geriatric psychiatrists that are making it easier for us to intervene and then become effective in helping the older adult connect to services.
Anybody else on that question?
I think that what's wonderful with the enhanced multidisciplinary teams is when the DA's office is, they sit on the teams, and being able to gain insight in terms of what needs to be done so that they can prosecute a case. Because sometimes, for somebody who's sitting on the outside, we're hearing about cases and we're thinking, well, why is the DA not prosecuting? What's going on? Especially when we hear about very egregious cases. So having the DA present, sitting around the table during the EMDTs to say, well, this is what we would need, or can you gain additional information about this, is really very, very helpful. And sometimes the older adults don't necessarily want the DAs to be involved. And that's something that needs to be discussed as well, because we do want to forward what the older adult wants when they have decision-making capacity.
Right. Different
Absolutely.
from child exploitation for sure.
Right.
People have
And
the self-determination. Go ahead, Shelley.
certainly, and to Tina's point too, right? That bodes with adult protective services workers. So if they determine in their investigation that there has been, criminal activity, they're required under law to report that to law enforcement. And then the crux is, right? Do I want my family member arrested? If it's a family member, am I going to lose the one person that's taking care of me if I report it? Right. So there are all those nuances that are involved in that. But from an adult protective services standpoint, they are required by law to report any criminal activity.
Yeah, and I think you just raised a really important point on why the EMDT structure here in New York State is so important, because there are triggers for adult protective services for you guys to get involved, and not every trigger gets met. But your point is really important in that this has a housing issue. There are social service issues. There are healthcare issues. There are economic security issues, which is why an enhanced multidisciplinary team simply means, and we're all the worst because we use all these acronyms. It's bringing all of these different specialties together so that you can address this holistically. I want to mention that we put out a press release today on the EMDT model, its successes and some case studies. So I am also proud to say that by the end of this year, every single county in the state of New York will have an EMDT operational. And Anne Marie, you were at the beginning with me when we started this pilot. And Shelley and Tina and all of the hubs around the state, can't thank you enough for all the work that you guys have been doing. And I want to do a shout out to one of my staffers, Eric Jacobson, who works on this with all of you guys as well. So let's talk about now the action. We always are on this program trying to educate people on whatever issue it is, but that is not enough. There's a cause and effect. If you see something, you report something. So let's talk about how you report elder abuse, and any of you can take that.
So sure, I'll start out. So one of the many ways, right, is if you suspect something or you're unsure, you can call your local adult protective services line. Every county has one. The Office of Children and Family Services also hosts an adult protective services helpline. I believe the number's right on your screen, and you can report either up to those two mechanisms. We always say if you're unsure and you think there's a significant safety issue that needs immediately to be addressed, you can also call law enforcement.
Now, Shelley, is there, or Anne Marie or Tina, any liability on my part? Like, I'm just not sure. Am I going to be named? How does that work?
So we always encourage the caller, and that's how we'll refer to the person making the call. We'll always refer to the caller. They have the ability to call anonymously. It's not always helpful to the investigation if the investigator can't reach the person who initially made the call to get a little more information. But under no circumstances, if you're calling under good faith, there will be no negative consequences for you from a legal standpoint.
And of course, what Shelley said is true in the Aging Service Network too. Concerned persons there's no liability. You don't have to give your name. You can just talk through a situation with one of our staff members to talk through that. It's always easier if we have your name, but please call if you are concerned about an older adult. We can walk through that and you can remain anonymous.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I just want to mention, in terms of the helpline for concerned persons, it really is a conversation with the person that calls, and to provide resources, suggestions, and what might be the potential consequence of a suggestion, so that and it is confidential. So that the person that calls in, the concerned person that calls in, really has a wide display of options that they can consider.
And Shelley, I just want to clarify, because we're talking a lot about older adults, but there are younger people as well. What's the age grouping that Adult Protective Services serves?
Very good point, Greg. So Adult Protective Services is responsible for the assessment and investigation of anyone 18 or older who has a physical or a mental impairment, and that impairment puts them at risk, and they're not able to prevent that risk on their own, and they additionally don't have a responsible party that's willing and able to assist them.
Great. Thank you for that clarification. What other types of resources are available to help victims or individuals who may be victims of abuse?
Yeah, certainly, Greg, the Aging Service Network. There's an office for aging in every single county, or you can call Lifespan. We can connect you or help you here, or connect you to your office for aging. And we often find that the services provided by the Office for Aging helps victims. Now, we also work in tandem very, very closely with Adult Protective Services. As a matter of fact, in our area in Monroe County, Lifespan has social workers over at Adult Protective Services so that the Aging Service Network and Adult Protective Services can work in tandem and in hand together. So we really do try to connect all of the providers so that we're working to help and support the older adult.
Yeah, I think the dream, right? The way that we've organized over decades and decades of the caring economy is a siloed approach. And what I love about the EMDT for elder abuse is it's not. And so every issue, regardless of whether it's abuse, whatever it is, should be an EMDT model, because that's how you break silos and you integrate care and you serve people the best as possible. So Tina, what are some legal considerations that can help prevent abuse? Prevention is critically important. And are there things that people can do to guard against or be proactive in terms of their planning to try to be out in front?
Yeah. So I I think that is really a cornerstone. I mean, planning, I believe, is really a cornerstone of what everybody needs to do. And of course, it spills over in terms of elder abuse and preventing elder abuse. Because when we set up a plan for the future, while we have capacity and while we're able to communicate and assess who is trustworthy in our inner circle, we can start the planning process. And there are numerous documents out there, and also, free legal service providers will provide assistance for these matters as well. I'm just going to go through some of the documents and some of the things that need to be on people's radars. And I know we're talking about elder abuse, but it should be on everybody's radar. Anybody over the age of 18 should be really, really thinking about this and starting to implement a plan. The first document that I think is extremely important to consider is to do a healthcare proxy. So the healthcare proxy is a document that allows you to choose somebody to make medical decisions on your behalf if you're unable to do so. And that means you might be unable to do so for a couple of hours or for a day or for a week. And then you're going to get better, and then you're going to be able to make these decisions. But already having a healthcare proxy that's going to allow to have somebody that you trust, and that is going to make medical decisions in light of what you have shared with them in terms of what your priorities are for your medical choices. And there's a lot of information. I see the website is appearing here under my image. A lot of information is on that website, on the New York State Department of Health website for instructions. There's also the healthcare proxy form is in various languages on that website. So absolutely take a look at that and share that and encourage people to complete that document. The next thing is there are other medical advance directives that can be completed. A living will is another type of form that allows you to state what kind of end of life decisions you medical choices you would like to have, whether you would like to continue treatment, not continue treatment. But it's really, really, really important to share if you have family member, friends, trusted individuals. It's really important to have a conversation with these people to let them know where you are standing and what it is that you want and what it is that you don't want. Because the more people who are aware of this, the more people, when we're not able to communicate, are going to be able to share this. And potentially prevent the elder abuse by reaching out to organizations and saying, wait a minute, there's something that's not right. Something's happening here, and I know that this is not what the older adult wanted. And I just want to also highlight, it's not because you sign a healthcare proxy that you're giving up power. Actually, you're providing power to someone else when you're not able to communicate your medical decisions. As long as you're able to communicate them, your healthcare agent does not step in and has absolutely nothing to say. You continue to make your own healthcare decisions. Another very important document is the statutory power of attorney, which is a document that allows for you to decide who should be able to assist you or step into your shoes to handle matters that have a financial component, which might mean, so basically anything that might have a correlation with money, which might include renewing a lease, accessing your bank accounts. So that is, so the power of attorney form in New York is quite complex. It should be done with an attorney. There are not-for-profits that assist low income, low asset New Yorkers with the completion of these documents. These documents allow you to choose which powers you're going to give, the extent of these powers, and to whom you want to give them to. And it's not necessarily so when you designate a person who's an agent under power of attorney, it can be somebody different than your healthcare agent, right? Because you might trust someone to make medical decisions for you, and you might trust somebody else to make financial decisions or assist you with your finances. And also with the power of attorney, you are not giving up power. We often hear alleged abusers that are saying, my mother signed a power of attorney, so that means that I get to speak on my mother's behalf. That is not true. As long as someone is able to understand what's going on, they are not giving away their powers to anybody else. But again, the idea is for all of these documents to really trust the person who is going to be able to act on our behalf, should we not be able to. A few other things to take into consideration, namely for bank accounts. I mean, there are different types of bank accounts. There can be, you can be the sole owner on a bank account. And in that case, it's just you that has access to the funds, unless there's either a bank power of attorney.
To make it Turner, please call the office.
Either a bank power of attorney or statutory power of attorney that allows somebody else to act on the principal's behalf, on the owner's behalf. But there are also other types of bank accounts, namely convenience accounts, and which is different than a joint bank account. So a convenience account, with a convenience account, the account holder gives someone else the authority to write checks or pay the account holder's bills. And at the death of the account holder, whoever has access to the account for convenience purposes does not get the remaining funds, which is very different. And we have been seeing, and of great concern, opening up online joint bank accounts, which is different. Because with a joint bank account, there is just access by this other person. And at the death of the older adult, if the older adult is joint owner with someone else, at their death, whoever's on the account will receive ownership of the assets. And that is really of great concern, especially, I mean, sometimes we hear family disputes where there might be one person, one sibling, or some other family member that is accessing or has changed or has requested, and I put requested in quotes, that the older adult change ownership on the bank account, or open up a new account and transfer funds that was in a sole ownership account into a joint bank account with that individual. So these are things that really need to be looked out for.
Yeah, and that's not necessarily nefarious, but it should be a red flag, right? And the great thing about recording this is you just went over a lot of complicated material right there, and I know that a lot of this is on your website. So let's keep going on that thought of what you were talking about. So there's a lot of tools there, both legal tools and other things that you would recommend financially. Let's shift into scams, because as Anne Marie and Shelley and yourself have all described, every type of elder abuse is horrific, but the financial exploitation is running amok and rampant. And the scammers are unbelievably sophisticated. At the beginning, mm-hmm. I'll give you an example. At the beginning of the pandemic, a woman from Vermont goes to Florida for the winter and got a link on her phone that had my name in it. And she looked up who I was and saw what my position was and thought, okay, Office for the Aging, it's okay to click this link. And that was the wrong move because you got a phishing scam, et cetera. You know, we've seen things that look like that would come from the county emergency operations center or your bank, et cetera. So tell us about scams, what types of scams you're seeing. You know, the grandparent scam, there's so many of them, and people can go to the top 10 scam list on the FBI website. It changes all the time. But what are you seeing and how do you guard against it?
Yeah, Greg, I have to say, especially since the pandemic, we are in a scandemic. It is unbelievable to me, the scams that we are seeing today, and the scammers are so sophisticated. But can I just tell you about a couple scams in which people told me in the last few days, as we've been out there on World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, I've had older adults themselves come up to me to tell me about a scam. And this morning I had a woman come up to me and say her sister-in-law lost $100,000 in a scam. And it was really someone saying there was a problem with her bank account and they were going to fix it for her. Another person yesterday told me they received a call on their cell phone and there was a problem with their cell phone and they just needed access to the cell phone to fix it. Well, she had her bank accounts linked to that. $2,000 was gone in 5 minutes. And there was another person, if you don't mind me going on, because these are so unbelievable, in which a daughter called us and she said, my mother's having problems with her finances and I just need someone to sit down with. Come to find out she lost $240,000 in a romance scam. Mm-hmm. And one you mentioned, Greg, just then, I have to say it happened to my own mother. And as you can imagine, I'm talking about this all the time. She received a call and it was a young man who said, you know, Grandma, it's me. And unfortunately, I'm in jail and I just need some bail money. And I know you're the only person I could call that will always help me. But don't tell my mom and dad, I'm too embarrassed. Thankfully, I have to say, my mother called me to say, I hate to tell you this, your son's in jail. And I said, Mom, Andrew is not in jail. Let me call him. And he was able to connect with my mother. But I'm going to say, I've talked to so many older adults who are afraid not to help their family member. And we are seeing hundreds of thousands of dollars, honestly, in a very short period of time, of people being scammed. So I appreciate you bringing this up on World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. Slightly different than what we think about when we think about abuse, but a huge issue that all older adults can relate to and identify to because they've all received those calls and we need to make people aware.
Yeah, and the sophistication, right, is there. We know that. But the solutions are incredibly easy. If you don't recognize the number on your phone, don't answer it. If it's somebody you know, they'll leave you a message and you can check it out. If something comes through that looks like it's your bank or Social Security with a link, do not click those links and provide access to the information. In your case, Anne Marie, you know, Andrew's in jail. Well, that's very, very easy to verify. So there's a lot of really low budget and no budget solutions to not becoming victimized. But I think we want to trust. We want to make sure, especially if you get something from like Social Security or the IRS. Oh my God, is this going to impact me, right? But you know, taking a little bit of extra time to actually call those places. Social Security is never going to send you something. Medicare is never going to send you something like that. Those things are very easy to guard against, but the numbers that you show with the hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, it's a growing and rampant problem. And I don't think that older adults, and I'll even say myself, have any idea how much of your own public data, whether it be Facebook messages and other, are out there for scammers to sift through to do exactly what you did. Have a mail call that could sound like your grandkid or what have you, or a romance scam, which seems to be, you know, in the top 2. So any other advice to people besides those simple things that I just talked about that you would recommend?
Greg, I would just say if someone's approaching you and you hadn't invited that approach, that's your first flag. So even if it's as simple as, geez, your driveway looks like it needs paving, and I'm down on my luck and I've got this extra asphalt, I can, charge you partial pay, or your roof looks like it needs fixing, or maybe I can paint your house. If people are approaching you, you really need to take a step back and kind of do some research before you, engage in any, business transaction.
Yeah, that's great advice. I got a couple more questions for you guys on these issues. So, one of the things I'm really proud of, not that I did, but you guys did, is the efforts that you work with Department of Financial Services and many of the banks and lending institutions to educate them on red flags. So can you talk a little bit about that type of training that you're providing? Because again, we talk about this is an all hands on deck approach.
Mm-hmm.
No, it definitely is, Greg, and we've been working very closely with the banks to educate not only bank officials, but I have to say tellers, and we've had remarkable results of bank tellers, working with people that they know every day in spotting possible financial exploitation. I know we had a person here in Rochester who once again, was taken advantage of by a person who was caring for him and went to the bank with him. And when, the teller thought this looks unusual, that this person who's caring for this individual keeps directing him to take money out of the bank, they pulled this person aside and said, "Why are you taking out $10,000? And when he didn't know, we received a call and really could stop that type of abuse. Mm-hmm. I mean, it really is up to everyone, I think, to just ask the question. I said to the teller when we found that out, I just said, thank you for just asking the question. That's all we need to do sometimes, is ask the question when things don't look right.
Yeah, and don't blame the person, right?
Right.
This stuff is extraordinarily sophisticated. Anne-Marie, I want to ask you specifically, because you and I have partnered on a couple of things over the last year and a half. You established, again, as a way to not only prevent, but then to potentially mitigate financial exploitation, a bill payer system that, we work together to get money in the budget to expand that in Western New York, as well as two technological tools that we're also piloting, Fraud Finder and EverSafe. Just talk a little bit about those.
We've had remarkable results too with financial management. Now, let me give you some background. This really got started for people who years and years ago lost a spouse, and that spouse was the one that handled the finances, and someone needed a little extra help to get them through. But what we found through the years is these financial managers have been incredible about spotting other forms of abuse, but definitely financial exploitation. I will never forget when one of our volunteer financial managers went to see the person they were helping and said, I told you, Sue, we have a budget. You can't keep going to the ATM machine to get out money. And her question was, what's an ATM machine? And he said, the machine you go to take out money. She said, I've never gone to a machine to take out money. Come to find out, her grandson intercepted her ATM card and was helping himself whenever he wanted to. So not only does this service, this financial management service, help people to pay their bills, we call it the 3 Bs, bill paying, budgeting, and access to benefits that help people. So it does all of that. It also spots these other forms of abuse and really eyes in the home. But I think further enhanced by some of the things that you're talking about, EverSafe now is really helping us through technology, looking at someone's typical way that bills that they pay each month, maybe their rent, their utility bills, and it will spot for us, which is terrific, anything unusual, so we can stop any financial exploitation sooner. And in turn, if there is financial exploitation, Fraud Finder is another technology tool in which we can use almost like a forensic accountant, running through all their bank statements and picking out things that look unusual so we can investigate that further. Excellent tools for us as we really try to help and support older adults throughout the state.
Exactly. We live in a tech society, so let's use the tech to our advantage and not be taken by it. And for those around the state that remember Liz Lowy in the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, that's the EverSafe product, and her partner's mother was a victim of financial exploitation. And I think what I love about both of these tools, Fraud Finder, is the magnitude of data you can put in that you don't need human eyes, that looks at irregularities and spending patterns that don't make sense, so you can serve a lot more people a lot more quickly. But EverSafe, and I always remember Liz giving this example, right? If I'm on average spending $300 a month in groceries, and in December I spend $550, it's going to put up a red flag. It doesn't mean something was wrong, but there's going to be an alert, because it could be, hey, this was my year to host Christmas dinner, and we went to town on Christmas dinner, and that's what it was. Or it could be something else. Somebody went to grocery shop and helped themselves to $250 or so. So I'm in total agreement with you. Now, my final question for the three of you, and you did not know I was going to ask you this, so I apologize. But we, two of us work for state government. Two of you guys are in the private sector, but you partner with us and others. How do we get the private sector that go into the homes, Amazons, Spectrum, cable providers, electricians, others that may have an opportunity to spot or have some concern? How do we get those types of folks into the loop here?
Greg, years ago, you'll probably remember we had a gatekeeper program. Actually, it was Art Mason, who the award was named after, trained a bunch of mail carriers. And, I remember him coming back and he said, I hope it worked, because I'm not sure they were interested. And then weeks later, it was a mail carrier that saved the life of an individual because they spotted that the mail wasn't being picked up. And so, I think we have to do a concerted effort. Like you said, Amazon people are there all the time and would see when things aren't being picked up, or, utility folks or whoever regularly goes to an older adult's homes. It does make a difference when we can train them. And I think we should all partner to see if we can do that.
Absolutely.
Agreed. Is there anything that I did not ask you, or anything that you want to go back and just underscore? I know we had phone numbers and websites. There was one comment, and I'm hoping that maybe they dialed the wrong number, that they called these numbers and there wasn't actually a human being on the other end. That has not been my experience, but we have a lot of resources that people can get to. But if they call any of the three numbers that you guys provided, there's going to be a human being on the end, and or you leave a message and somebody will get back to you. Is that correct?
Absolutely. 100%.
Great. Anything else that you would like to let everybody know?
Greg, I think the last thing I'd like people to know is the way to stop elder abuse is for us to, number one, recognize that it actually exists. And there are some people out there that this is so foreign to them. And the second thing is to say something or ask a question. Those simple things, we can make a huge difference in the lives of older adults. And I hope as people leave World Elder Abuse Awareness Day today, let's make every day World Elder Abuse Awareness Day and ask a question to help an older adult.
Agreed.
Absolutely.
Shelley, what's going on tonight across New York State?
Well, I hope the buildings and bridges are lit up crazy. That's for sure. Lit up purple, because purple's our color, right? And
Absolutely.
in addition to that, today we asked people to, instead of standing by, to stand up. And Anne Marie, we said the same thing, right? If you're unsure, why don't you ask a question before things get worse? And certainly with the some of the federal funding, Greg, that New York State received, I know our local districts are out there doing public awareness events to their communities as well, trying to raise awareness. And not just today, but throughout the past 2 years, they've been spending some of that federal funding, try to raising awareness and getting people involved.
Yeah, and you guys did that today with your partners at DCJS. That's Criminal Justice Services. Anne Marie, you did as well. I want to shout out to Gina Cantanucci and the whole team in Washington County. Tina, I'm sure you guys did as well. And we're going to be accumulating all those pictures and hopefully pictures of, state-owned property tonight to raise awareness. But we're going to leave you on this message. June 15th is World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. Every day, as Anne Marie and the others said, it's our responsibility as community members, as family members, as caring individuals to make every day World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. I want to thank Alex Hyatt for making this production, as always, run extraordinarily efficiency. My public information officer, Roger Noyes, as well, the entire communications team. Looking forward to having you join us on July 13th. We're going to have a couple really guest experts from the EMS system, emergency management. You might think you call 911, EMS comes and takes you to the hospital, and that's all that they do. You're going to be in for quite a surprise on how much that has changed and how we can really link together, not only support the EMS system, but many of the calls that come into EMS are not emergencies, they're social service situations, and how we can all partner together, because every topic should be an EMDT like this one is. So I want to thank my guests again, Tina, Anne Marie, and Shelley. You guys are great. Thank you for all that you do, and we'll see you next time.
Great.